Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Fullmetal Alchemist, Brotherhood. Episode 55, very peculiarly named The Adult's Way Life. In this episode, it turns out some of these mannequins did get out. I'm not really entirely sure how they got out, but they did, and it's an issue that we're dealing with. Most importantly, though, Wrath is back. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Max for commissioning this episode. Hi, Max, if you're out there. Reminder to everybody that I'm going to be recording another one of these tomorrow morning. I think I have it scheduled for 10 Central Time to make up for the fact that I couldn't do it on Friday last week. So if you are available, come and hang out with me tomorrow morning. Yeah, I don't know if anybody has an explanation for the name of this episode, but I found it really weird, and I keep turning it over in my mind, trying to figure out what they meant, and I don't get it. But if y'all have any information on it, I would appreciate it. The episode starts off with Roy and Ed alone chatting. Like, they're not alone. There's people with them, but they're dropped back. So we just have the two of them sort of talking with one another. And Ed is feeling like we should have gotten somewhere by now as they're walking along. And Roy, first of all, is like, "Oh, are you lost?" In a way that Ed has an extremely out of proportion reaction. He gets really, really mad. And initially I was like, "Ed, why are you so upset?" But then this is quickly followed up with Roy telling Ed, "Nobody asked you to come back." And that was when I was immediately like, "Okay, Ed, go ahead and flip out now. Initially, I was not on your side. I've been won over because what the fuck, Roy?" And basically what Roy says to Ed, because Ed says you'd be halfway on your way to Psycho Town right now, I think is like the way he puts it, if it weren't for me and Scar. And Roy credits all of his coming back from the brink of Psychoville to Hawkeye. And I just can't get over. Like, I'm pretty sure Roy is only doing this to sort of needle at Ed. But even so, like, why? Why do you like poking and prodding at him so much, Roy? What's the deal anyway? He just likes to fuck with him. And he needs a hobby. That's all I'm saying. Damien says, I think it's in reference, the title. I think it's in reference to the conversation between Izumi and Olivier about how we can't let the young ones do all the fighting for us and yada yada. Okay. It just feels like there is a much better way to word this than the adult's way life. It just feels very confusing and clumsy, but it doesn't really matter. And I think you're probably right. So mentioning like what I said in the intro, some of these mannequins have like, and I didn't really address this because the mannequins surfaced at least to the room where the Armstrongs were fighting with Sloth last episode. And I didn't talk about it then, but I was already wondering. I thought that they got locked into the room that we saw Ed and crew fighting them in. And like, I didn't realize that any more had managed to get past them and out the door and not be encountered by Roy and Hawkeye. Because that's the main thing for me, is like, if some got past them, that would make sense. But Roy and Hawkeye come down like towards the end of that battle. And if some had gotten past, I would have thought the two of them would face them. And instead, the impression that we get when they see them in that room is that's the first time they've come across the mannequins at all. And I don't think, unless I am mistaken, that there's another way out. I really got the sense that through Ed and company was the only exit to get to the surface, and that otherwise there wasn't another way. And I must just have, like, they're in this tunnel, but it, like, we don't really get a bird's eye view of the tunnels and where exactly they're coming from within that, like, tunnel network. So I had it in my head that this was all of them coming directly from the one location. And I think all it is that they randomly went out into tunnels and are sort of going to pop up in arbitrary places. And maybe I'm misunderstanding that, but I just want to make sure that I kind of have a sense of it, because I don't want to fall into the trap of thinking that something doesn't that it's not like internally consistent when actually it is, and I'm just misunderstanding what's going on, because that certainly happens. Oh, Damien says Crunchyroll lists it as the adult's way of life. So I'm assuming it's an issue on the JPN side. Okay. That makes sense. The adult's way of life is way better. Ed and crew went in from Laboratory 3. The mannequins came out through the various exits throughout Central Headquarters. Okay. Because I was thinking that they got up to the surface and then went into different buildings. But I was like, that doesn't make sense. They wouldn't just go to, civilians would be running into them. And the whole thing is supposed to be, we're keeping them away from the civilians. So, okay, got it. And bouncing back to Ed and Roy, after we finish with them sort of backbiting one another, we have a conversation between Scar and Hawkeye. And Hawkeye basically tells Scar, I think that you're the one who kept him from completely losing it. And I know that it's not really probably like great for you to hear that you've done something good for one of us, because why would you want to? But I just want you to know that I really appreciate it. And Scar seems startled by that, but he pretty quickly is like, there's no need for you to thank me. And it seems like it's sort of the end of the conversation at that point. So at this point, we have all of the Briggs men announcing that they have taken over the headquarters for the most part, and that they have General Kremen, the guy who I thought was Kremlin and was super disappointed that it wasn't, that they have him in custody. And he's really mad. He's like, oh, I see. You were using the tank to distract from the fact that you were using alchemy to dig this tunnel. And she's just like, I mean, yeah, you're getting it now. Congratulations. We jump from her saying that right to a mannequin launching itself teeth first at somebody. And I thought for sure Izumi was getting attacked by a mannequin, that they had just like busted in. But no, it's the start of a new scene with new people. And I was just super confused, because a soldier like lunges forward and he manages to jam his rifle between the teeth of the thing and hold it back. But I thought for a moment that he was stepping in between the mannequin and Izumi to protect her. And it becomes very quickly clear that we're no longer standing with them anymore. The cut was just pretty abrupt. So it took me a moment to like catch on to what was happening. And this is when Olivier is finding out that they've got Armstrong, that they have Kremen, and she picks up the phone and warns Buccaneer about these weird man-eating monster things and tells him, make sure you keep the gates closed and do not open them again until we are certain that all of these things are dead. And that is our top priority right now, is to kill them as fast as we can. And this is when we have this dude who's credited as Frank going into the main office and looking at the Fuhrer's chair. Guys, who is this? Is this anybody? I don't remember him at all. And it's like him, I don't know. The punchline may be that we don't know him. And this guy who is a fucking nobody is certain that he's going to be able to like become Fuhrer now. But it really is like 2 seconds between us seeing him thinking that he gets the throne, and then him getting eaten alive by a mannequin. And it's super funny because he doesn't even get to put a hand on the chair. He's reaching out to the chair, and this mannequin interrupts to attack in the middle of this. And all I could think about with him being like, this is now the center of operations and I'm the one in charge, was that he seems to really think sitting in the chair is just sort of like finders keepers. Like, that's not probably how it would go, guy. But he's quite confident in this moment and pretty excited about it. And I was just really happy that I didn't have to sit through multiple episodes of him thinking he's like effective or doing anything before he gets taken down. Just immediately getting eaten. That was what I was here for. I was totally happy about it. Damien says, just a power-hungry nobody. B. Moore says, brings to mind the death of Stalin, which is a hilarious movie that would be even more hilarious, except that it's basically true, and that makes it sad. I have not seen Death of Stalin, so hearing that it's hilarious is surprising, because I'll tell you what, that's not what I would expect. So yeah, this just like, if we win this battle, it just might be mine. And like I said, he's literally reaching out to touch it with this reverence when the door opens behind him and we see these guys come running in. So later on, when the Armstrongs have like finally finished with Sloth, they come across this scene of carnage, basically, of these dudes having been killed. They aren't as eaten up as I was kind of hoping that they would be. There's more of them left than I was expecting, because I sort of look at these mannequins as like zombies, because that's kind of the vibe, really. But I don't know, maybe they just don't want us to see that kind of thing in this show, you know? We've had some stuff that's like gory and brutal, but that's a different kind of gory and brutal. So we return to this fight with Sloth and Armstrong, and we have another moment of him healing himself, yanking his whole body up off of the spikes in the ground, and managing to come at Major Armstrong with that super speed, but just slamming into a wall. And Armstrong tries to stop him using the spikes again, but Sloth sort of catapults through them at that high speed in a way that takes all of them off their feet, and everybody starts to think maybe I should jump in and help him with this, even though nothing that they have done so far has seemed to help. And one of the soldiers comes up with a really good idea where he sees these chains on the ground, and they put the chains up in the middle of the room the way Tyrion does for like the Blackwater to trap the ships. And all of these men, it's like 12 of them, are each holding onto one side of the chain, so that when Sloth picks up super speed, he's sort of slammed to a stop and has to slowly step forward, one foot after the other, like when those guys who are in the NFL have to practice like tackles and they're going against those, what are those called? You guys know what I'm talking about, where they brace their shoulders against this sort of sled and like push it. That's kind of the attitude of these guys, is that pushing forward, trying to keep Sloth from being able to cut through. And it's a really, like, I thought that this was actually a really good idea and worked longer than I thought it would. I was expecting Sloth to be able to break right through these chains pretty quick. And eventually he does, but they hold him back for a good long moment. So eventually he breaks free. He comes at Armstrong, and then he gets punched by a giant fist that comes out of the wall that it turns out is made of the wall and also has a door in it. So Izumi steps out of a fist with a door in it, which is probably the most appropriate entrance she has made in the show so far. And just the idea of like being able to shape the area that you walk through to make your entrance, that sounds like so high drama to me. There's something very Beyonce about that. And I've been trying to think, like, what would my thing be, that the door I finally step out and make my big entrance, what would I make the wall be shaped like? And I can't come up with a fucking thing. I'll be perfectly honest, you guys. But the fist, so excellent. I love this. And remind me, guys, what is Izumi's husband's name? Because he winds up being a whole thing in this section. We hadn't gotten to really see him like flex before. And this is when we really see him suit up and begin to fight. And it's impressive. He has more of a paunch than Armstrong does, but he also seems to have way bigger muscles. So they seem to sort of like, Armstrong is in more like tight shape, but Sig seems like sturdier to me somehow. And if I'm going to pick one, I'm going with Sig, just like for the record. I like a belly on a guy, I do. I know abs are like such a thing for so many women, so many people who like men, not just women. I just don't care about abs. I like really, truly do not. Arms, pecs, shoulders, that's where it's at for me. As long as you've got that going on, I'm going to be like, yo. Stomach, I don't care. Truly cannot. The other one is thighs. Big fan. Owen's got some thick thighs, and I really like them. So both of them have that. Can't really pick one over the other based on that. But he is Sig. Thank you, Damien. He makes his grand entrance a moment later, because first Izumi sends Sloth flying through the air toward him. And I love that both Armstrongs stop and look up with their eyes wide at the way that she just sends him flying. And then Sig, it's like she pitched him, and Sig's arm is the bat. And his bat just comes out and catches, it's like he clotheslines Sloth. And Armstrong and Sig then have a peck off, where they each like do the peck flexing thing. I cannot express to you all how much I hate that peck thing that like jacked dudes do. It is so off-putting. I don't know what it is. It makes me really uncomfortable, like in my insides. It feels just like creepy, you know? I understand that it's meant to be that they have like control over each one as they're doing it, but it looks like there is an animal trapped under their skin, or they have like a really weird twitch. And as somebody with a twitch, I feel like I can say that. And this is like such a common thing for dudes to like flex their pecs when they're trying to show off how in shape they are. And I wish we had come up with some other kind of like cultural shorthand to get that across. I guess there's like the, you know, flexing of the arm where you curl. And it's not used as much though. Usually when a guy does this, it's supposed to be the precursor to finding out they're not actually as strong as they're pretending, or they're like mistaking the type of strength necessary. The pec thing is usually meant to be like, no, really, I'm jacked. Anyway, they both do this at each other for a minute. And then they team up and they begin to beat the shit out of Sloth together. And they prove to be quite effective as a team. It's great. They send Sloth flying into the ceiling. And the moment where they sort of like acknowledge one another and then shake hands, there is a look that passes between them. And I am just going to say they really should hook up, because there is some chemistry between Sig and Major Armstrong. Like, truly. They're looking in each other's eyes and there's like sparkles. They are very into each other. And personally, I would be very happy to be the filling in that sandwich. So should they care to include Azumi, I am extremely jealous of you, girl, and get it. That's all I'm going to say about that. But yeah, their team up, they get Sloth with a spike yet again. And finally, this is the thing that takes him out. Because it looks for a second like Sloth is once again going to be able to get out of this one. And instead, he grabs at it like he's going to do the same thing, and his hand just starts to dissipate into thin air. And I love Sloth's last line, which is something like, am I dying? What's dying like? It's such a pain to die, but also a pain to live. And I was just like, yeah, that is some real shit you just said, Sloth. Not gonna lie to you. That feels like you actually got a good look at the human experience, despite being a homunculi bent on destruction at the expense of all else. Mostly, that's it. That's what it's like. So, bye, I guess. But yeah. And this is the moment where Armstrong and Sig look at each other and have a little like, oh, hey, what's up? So General Armstrong yells to the men who are like still standing around watching this moment and tells them, are you gonna go and fucking deal with these mannequins or what? Guys, come on, do this. And there was a sort of weird moment between, first we have her kind of collapsing and saying, I need a moment. And we have her brother, who earlier they're telling him that he should get out while he can. And he says, I'm not going to run from another fight. And the suggestion is that he's ashamed of having done that at all. I don't really know what we're supposed to think, because I have taken it as an unmitigated positive, a check in the pro column for Major Armstrong that he didn't fight in the Ishvalan War, that he was so horrified at what he was seeing that he wouldn't be a part of it, couldn't be a part of it. It feels almost like it was outside of his control, the emotional reaction that he had in response to seeing what they were doing, and simply could not function. And yet, between the way his sister treats him and talks about him, And this moment of him being like, I will never run from a fight again. It feels like I'm supposed to judge him for his choice there. And I am judging everybody else for not doing the same thing that he did. I don't know if I'm supposed to be on his sister's side. I've been assuming this whole time her talking to him the way that she does and referring to him as a coward and useless, that all that was supposed to mean was we're underlining what a hard ass she is. She has a very black and white viewpoint on things, and either you follow orders like you are instructed to, as you swore to do, or you don't, and you're a traitor who sucks. And regardless of your reasoning, that's how it is with her brother. And I was totally willing to accept that as just her character and the way that she sees the world. But then there's this moment here where it almost feels like it's being played as a redemption of his earlier mistake, and that he's finally like going to stand up and do the right thing. And it felt really weird to me because we know the original war was fought on behalf of homunculi who were bent on like world destruction or something. So feeling the need to make up for that when you were the one person who like put your foot down and didn't participate in a genocide, it's a weird vibe to me that I was genuinely a little bit confused because I thought I understood what we were supposed to be thinking up till that point. And the baggage that he seems to have around that is understandable from his point of view, like him having personal shame. Even that I would understand, despite the fact that I don't think he should. You don't always feel the way that logically makes sense. It's more the way that it seems to be played by the direction of the scene, the musical cues that surround it, just the whole way that it's depicted feels like it's supposed to be a major victory. And it's a weird, it's kind of, what it reminded me of is, this is like, I really love Die Hard, but the main thing that always bums me out about it is that one of the big victories at the end of the movie is a cop who shot a child finally manages to get over the like fear of using his weapon and shoot somebody again. Which, like, maybe if you shot a kid because it was dark and he had a wallet and you thought it was a gun, maybe you shouldn't shoot people anymore because you are bad at it and have poor judgment. But it's treated as this like big hooray, he's made it to the other side when he shoots some other guy. And I was always just kind of like, that's a real weird sort of moment, but I guess. And this felt kind of like that to me. Damien says, I've always read it as him regretting breaking down like that rather than turning around on his superiors or some other option rather than breaking down. Okay. April says, is it that Armstrong didn't more actively resist / revolt? Now, see, I like this. Sorry, I'm adjusting, and I know it probably sounds crazy. I like that idea, but it doesn't seem like that's what they're saying. And if it is, I would really like for it to be explicitly said, I should have done more to stop it. And if he did, or like that would be even more treason, right? It would be more of a reason for his sister to despise him because he would be actively turning on the people who are giving orders. But the moment that he says he's not going to run and he's going to keep fighting, his sister kind of gives him a look. And then afterwards, she's like, oh, so you didn't run from a fight finally. And she's clearly proud of him. So it doesn't seem like it's that. It really does seem like I'm supposed to think he did the wrong thing. And if it is just like the breaking down or wanting to do more, I prefer to think that. I like that better. But that certainly doesn't feel like what they're trying to do here. And what they're trying to say based on like the response she has. So I just wanted to address that because, like you guys know, as soon as I started to find out more details about what happened in Ishval, I was like, wait, my sweet cinnamon roll Armstrong was a part of this? I like this guy. I don't want him to have been part of this. And I was really relieved to find out that he was like, I am not doing that. What? I was just so pleased that he decided not to follow orders, which is a really ballsy choice that's difficult. And the fact that he's like still part of the military after that at all is genuinely kind of surprising. So the fact that the thing that like was a relief to me and made me respect him seems to be sort of a problem is a bit of a bummer to me. Damien says she does tend to see a lot of situations as a battle, so it could be read in a lot of different ways. I suppose, but I just think taken as a whole, things are pretty much what they look like here. So, I don't know. And we might get more about this later, but we only have 9 episodes left after this, so I am not anticipating a major shift in what's supposed to have happened with him. And I may be wrong. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, this whole bit with Izumi, she's looking around and Armstrong and her have like a conversation here where she says to Izumi, it's really surprising to me that with your skills, that I have never heard of you before. And Izumi says, my skills? And then says, I'm an alchemist and a housewife, nothing more. And I'm like, what does that mean? Like, being an alchemist is a skill. Being a housewife is a skill, for sure. And why are you acting like that's not relevant? It's 100% relevant. She's trying to be like, to like make a little bit of a joke here, but I was like, that's, you're not really down talking yourself the way you think you are with that. And she asks Olivier, have you met the Elric brothers? And all of a sudden Olivier is like, oh, I know where you are. I know who you are. I'm sorry. I got completely turned around in the middle of that sentence. But I wanted so bad for this to be the moment where Izumi outs herself as the one who was stealing things from Briggs for a month or 3 months or whatever it was. I really thought, you guys, that this was going to be the moment where she like drops that bomb and it doesn't come up and I am dying. I don't think it ever will, based on the fact that it doesn't here. And I may be wrong, but I was so interested in seeing how Olivia would react to that, because I truly can't tell if she would be impressed at the fact that Izumi managed to survive and like get by, or if she would take it as a personal insult that Izumi stole from her. And I'm just still really wanting to know how that would go. So this is when Alex says, tell me the truth. Can you stand? And Olivier stands up saying, don't say foolish things. But when she stands, she has to put a lot of her weight on her sword. It's very clear she's got an injury here. And her brother is the one who says, we have to keep fighting. We can't just let the youngsters do it, even if we are injured. And I really did like the way Olivier takes it. She says, we can't just sit around. We have to show the next generation how it's done. And I like that in particular. Just basically like, this may be our last chance to like engage in this kind of battle. And we shouldn't tap out. We should give it everything. And if we die, we die. what are you going to do? There's a real sense of like, that wouldn't be so bad, right? And I had forgotten, there was a couple of times here where I was waiting for Izumi to like do the cough thing, but I had forgotten that their dad has healed her, and not completely, but she's not having the coughing up blood thing continuously like she had been, which is very helpful considering they're about to be in a major battle. So this is when we go to Father, and this really weird scene. He is sitting across from Hempstool, and they're just sort of eyeballing each other in this incredibly dramatic moment. And Hohenheim is like, it's kind of weird that you're not really having any reaction to the fact that I'm standing here. You used to be kind of fun, and now you're just motionless, and what's going on? You were vibrant. And then he talks about the 7 sins and is like, I mean, sure, they can ruin a person's life if any of them is there in excess, but they also are part of what humans are. And if you siphoned them all away, you're not going to understand this experience. Why would you do that to yourself? And as he says this, Father uses some alchemy to turn the spot Hohenheim is standing into this like really tall pedestal, and then pulls a set of stairs down the front. Hohenheim is running down the front. I'm assuming he made the stairs to get down. And as he is, Father creates a fist, sends it towards, like, through the air toward him. And Hohenheim creates, like, he turns it into a sort of building around himself with a door in it and steps out of it. And then Father begins coming at him with basically, like, spears. I don't even know what to call them. And Hohenheim says at one point how he's like out of practice with fighting, with alchemy, and he needs a little bit of time to get used to this again. They start making like stone dragons that are attacking one another. And as they're doing this, Hohenheim is asking, I don't get, if you don't care about humanity, why are you making like little sub creatures and making them call you Father and having this kind of weird community? Is it that you want a family and you are jealous of human beings for having like a kind of community that you're never going to be able to have? And when he says this, Father has the first like real reaction that he has had this whole time. He looks angry and shocked and upset, almost scared. He drops into the floor and he pops out of the floor behind Hohenheim, somehow managing to travel through matter, which I don't know if a really good human alchemist could eventually do this, or if he can only do it because he's a homunculus. But either way, he tells Hohenheim, I would never lower myself to the level of human beings. And as he says this, he reaches into Hohenheim's body and he says, I'm going to become a perfect one. You have a philosopher's stone in you, and I'm going to take it. And we see these red veins beginning to go up his arm, which makes it look like he's absorbing the philosopher's stone, like the essence of it, because they're red, right? But all of a sudden, he pulls out, almost like he got stung or bitten somehow, and he yanks his hand out and is looking at it like, what the fuck? Because it's almost shaking. And Hohenheim says, you might say that I've simply done what you wouldn't. You have cast aside something every bit as important as your emotions. And Father says, what would that be? And Hohenheim says, don't expect to win this easily, not when you're fighting us. And we cut away, so we don't get the actual answer. I don't know if it's supposed to be more of the like, it's the friends we made along the way stuff, or because it seems like he has an ingredient in him that, for lack of a better way of putting it, Father is having an adverse reaction to. And I can't tell if it's the fact that he siphoned off those emotions and now is exposing himself to a human being-ish that has those emotions still, that's making it like sort of, he's more sensitive to it now because it's no longer a part of him, like a reverse immunization, I suppose. I don't know, but we don't go back to the two of them this episode at all, I don't think. So this is when we cut to Al and Henkel and Yoki. And Marco's there as well. And the car is like sunk into the back rear wheel is in a sort of broken pothole area that they're trying to like lift the car out of. And did we see them get into this little like car accident, for lack of a better way of saying this? It felt like we jumped into something and I couldn't place the context of what was happening here. And I'm not sure if I meant to, or if maybe there was something that was cut, or if there was something post credits that I missed. Okay. Damien says no. Okay. It's just felt weird. You know, we're jumping into the middle of this. We didn't see the car suddenly hit a pothole and get sunk. We just open on this. And I was surprised that we don't actually see, because it's like, usually when you're telling this kind of story, you want us to observe the action for ourselves. So opening on them already dealing with getting the car out of the pothole was a surprising narrative choice, because this is far less exciting to watch without the crash first than it would be otherwise. But maybe it was just like a timing thing where they didn't have time. And Marco is trying to like help them lift the car out of the pothole. And Al is like, dude, me and Henkel can deal with this by ourselves. It's really fine. And we see somebody walking past them in the background here. And we cut to another fight. So this person walking in on the background, I thought was going to turn on them right here. Not so. This is the first glimpse we're getting of the Fuhrer walking back in. And I thought it felt significant that we see a sword that's been drawn, the tip of it down by his like shins. And that was why when we cut to this woman firing a gun in the fight back in like central headquarters, I had a moment of like, wait, what's going on? Because I thought for sure this guy walking around, like sort of not being noticed by our friends, what we're cutting to is going to wind up being him attacking them or doing something. And it was there's been a couple cuts this episode that I was like, maybe it's just that there's so much going on, but it felt a little bit confusing here and there. And okay, you know, I'm about to sort of like sideline into Wrath, but we'll get there in a second. The woman who's firing, she is with the guy who I always want to call Bandolier, Buccaneer. And he is telling them to get out of there because he is fighting these mannequins for them. And it was very annoying because these three women are like soldiers, but they're still like, as they're firing their weapons. And I was just kind of like, I mean, I'm not going to say that we haven't had some of the male soldiers also be like, oh my God, as they're firing. But it was just that it was all women in this room separately and him saving them. And I kind of had a moment of like, what? Come on. But they're walking in and talking amongst one another about how the fact that the central guys have sort of turned on one another for a little while makes their job easier. And there is a moment with another head of I'm not sure if he's like a general or what, but he's being cornered by these things. And he says something about how you were supposed to obey all of our orders without question. I'm not the one that you're supposed to be killing. You're supposed to kill the other ones. That man lied to us. And this is sort of bringing back my original question, which was, is this how the mannequins were originally intended to work? That he lied that they would obey orders and was planning 100% from the start for these mannequins to eat alive the very people that thought they were going to benefit? Or is it that they were not given enough time to like percolate and they are malfunctioning because they were put into use way too quickly? And I've been sort of biding my time, but I think I'm just going to come down on saying this was part of the plan. Because Father is not reacting down in that basement. He doesn't seem bothered at all by the fact that these things are clearly going apeshit and eating everybody. So I have to assume if he doesn't care about them, this was their intended purpose from the beginning. And that is delightful to me. It's like way more satisfying if the whole thing was an okie doke versus one idiot dude like pressed the power button too soon and ruined a plan that otherwise would have worked, you know? Let's see. B. Moore says, I don't know this for sure, but my assumption was that they just didn't show up in the manga for a long time, and that little scene was tossed in to explain why they were absent. Interesting. That would make sense. So yeah, this guy is shooting at them and eventually runs out of bullets, and the mannequins descend on him, and it looks like he's for sure about to get eaten, but they all get shoved over the banister of the railing, and he sits up and Izumi is standing there, and he tries to be like, oh, well, thank you, and also you should be part of my security detail. I'll see you're taken care of. And she gut punches him and tells him, would you be so kind as to tell me a little bit more about the good gentleman that you mentioned earlier? And we cut from there to the Armstrongs walking in on the scene where those guys were eaten by the mannequins, the guy who was going to sit in the Fuhrer's throne. And one of the soldiers asks General Armstrong, are you going to be taking over? And she says, I don't know why anybody would sit there and make themselves such an easy target. And I love that. It's like, you could take it totally literally, but honestly, that's like words to live by in terms of power structures. Like, there is a position that's going to get the most attention. And that's part of what a lot of people want. Like when they aim for a position like that, is they want the attention that comes with that kind of power. And then there are people who are like, no, I want the power, but I don't want the kind of attention that makes everybody like, no, I'm the one with the power. I just want the power and then everybody to be looking in a different direction. And that feels very appropriate for me with General Armstrong because she is shrewd. She knows how to play everything. And that's part of why they trusted her enough to like bring her into the circle the way they did, even though it wound up all going to hell, it went to hell pretty much when she decided it was going to. Let's be honest. She had full control over that situation for a lot longer than I would have expected. So this is when her brother sees that open doorway, and they find this huge set of stairs going way, way down. And they're realizing that probably the mannequins came up from this direction. This is when they're interrupted by Buccaneer saying that we have got the main gate. Another guy talking about how we've got like most of Central. The mannequin soldiers need to be done away with, but we're like well on our way to doing that. Overall, everybody that is on our side is in control. And they're all very happy with themselves. Unfortunately, this is pretty short-lived. Everybody gets these very fierce smiles on their faces. Buccaneer's the first one to just basically like let out a war cry. Soldiers are throwing their hats into the air, celebrating with one another. And it feels almost like it was nearly easy. And they begin chanting victory. And then, I love this, Wrath actually gets a hold of like a radio. So he manages to cut in as they're cheering and just says, "Greetings, I'm back." Which I don't know why that being the first thing that he says is so funny to me, but it felt really understated. And I was expecting, if he were to do something like in this way, that it would be a lot more like snide, that he'd do sort of celebrating your victory. A little premature, don't you think? Something like that, you know, where he's being sardonic. And I should have realized that's never really been Wrath's MO. He's very direct. So I don't know why I thought we were going to get traditional supervillain. But instead, it's just, hey, yo, so I'm here, just putting it out there. Judging by the mess I see, it would appear that things have gotten rather out of hand in my absence. Now, wouldn't it? As of now, I am personally taking command. We will get rid of the rebels. All available central forces, it's time to fight. And I am desperately curious what is going to happen here. Because central forces are obviously anybody who's like not with our guys. But how many of them remain in a position where they could fight back? How, like, who is he gathering up exactly? And are there going to be people who are on our guy's side that defect now that they know, like, Bradley's alive? Because it isn't common knowledge that Bradley's a homunculus. We still haven't shared that information with everyone as a whole. And I feel like that's really, you're going to have to soon. You're going to have to let everybody know, like, the truth about what's going on here, I would think. The populace has been thinking that there was a coup against Bradley and that Roy was the one stopping that and saving, you know, Bradley's wife. But now Bradley's showing up and calling them rebels. What is the actual civilian population going to make of this situation? Are they going to think that Roy was lying? Or that Bradley's like misinterpreting what's going on? Because he says all of this in a way that makes it clear he hasn't been around to see what's been going on. He's very clearly going, wow, I've been away for a minute and I step back in and everything has gone to hell. So is it going to be that people start to think, oh, Bradley like just is misinterpreting what happened here or what? I just don't know what like how this is going to shake out and what the opinion is going to be. And he's, like I said, on a radio. So I'm assuming that the civilians are hearing all of this and know what he's up to. So let's see. Damien says the Briggs soldiers are a third party and another fork of a coup attempt. So the populace will think that the Briggs soldiers are the problem. Officially, there's none of Mustang's men inside headquarters. Oh, I see what you're saying. Because, like, we know they're all part and parcel. But that's because, like, we know that General Armstrong has been in on things with him, but that's never been made super public. So, okay, I see what you're saying. So these dudes basically salute him as he comes back in. And there's a couple dudes who look like they're going to follow him into the building, and he gestures them back. He has something tucked into the waistband of his pants. Is that the sheath for his sword? I couldn't figure out what it looked like, because, like, it almost looks like a hammer. But I thought, that doesn't quite seem right. I don't know. And the last moment that we get is him glaring up at the building as he stands there with the sword in his hand. And I don't think that there is a post-credits scene in this one, unless I am mistaken. But I think that was the actual end of the episode. So, let's see. Oh, Damien says a grenade. We've seen them a few times throughout the series. I don't remember them. Does not look like a grenade. Weird looking grenade. But if we've seen them before, I probably made the comment that they look weird before, because I tend to be very predictable. All right. I mean, you could just throw a grenade in the build, but that's not going to really do. I mean, you wouldn't lead with that. I'm very curious what he plans to do. I also want to know what he's going to think about the Immortal Army being gone, because they seem to be gone. And maybe there's like a backup batch. I don't know. But if he's on Father's side, they've served the purpose they were supposed to, or at least part of it. Maybe he won't care about that. But I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see. So, yeah, I think that's about it for this episode. But it was pretty tight. And I can't believe we've got 9 more to go, and then we're done, y'all. 9. It just, I don't know why, but I'm so immersed in this. And once the series is over, I'm just going to be like, well, what now? But I'm going to wrap it up. So thank you again very much to Max for commissioning this. Thank you to Damien and Be More and everybody, Seraphim, who were in the chat. And I just appreciate all of you chiming in with everything. And I will see you again tomorrow with a new episode. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.